What's up, guys? This is Brave, and I'm back with another review of Tyler Perry Sistas. This is season 2, episode 21, and the episode is titled Where the Heart Is. Let's go ahead and talk about this episode. So, we open this show up with Aaron busting through the door because for some reason he thinks that Karen and Zach are having some type of fight. And I'm like, that's what you thought those sounds were? Really? I need you to get your ears checked. So he busts through the door. Of course, Zach is doing his thing with his thing. And first of all, we all love the scenes of Zach doing his thing with his thing. But I just feel like the scenes with Fatima are a lot better than this one with Karen. I'm just going to call it out. So, the door is wide open. Aaron is just standing there. And Zach is like, close the door. So he goes and closes the door. Next thing you know, Karen is like, oh my gosh, put your clothes back on, all this stuff. And while she's telling him that, I don't understand how this conversation got where it went. Because she's telling him to hurry up, put his clothes on, this wasn't supposed to happen. But at the same time, she's also like, what is this that you have on me? What are you doing to me? And it's like, girl, you just wanted the D. Just be honest with yourself. Because at this point, you didn't care who it was coming from because Aaron wasn't giving it to you. So they end up, getting dressed, whatever. I mean, her hair was looking a mess. And when they go out, why was Aaron still there, y'all? I'm sorry, but if I was Aaron, I definitely would have been like, Pam, I'm going to go sit in my car. You can go get my phone, and I'm done with this situation. He literally sat there and waited. Who's to say that Karen and Zach weren't going to finish their session? You was just going to be sitting out there waiting for her to get done? Really? Who does that? So, Zach ends up leaving. Karen sends Pam home, and her and Aaron have a conversation. And I'm just like, you really sitting, okay, I just don't understand. You're really about to sit up here, right after you got done, not even finished, I guess, with Zach. And you about to sit in this man's face and be like, I'm so sorry. Aaron is one better than me. Because Aaron is like, clearly I wanted more for you, but I'm not enough for you. And she's like, well, I want it all. And I wish that she would have said, I want it all with you. Just because her saying that she wants it all, that means she wants to, be in a good relationship and all this stuff. But she also wants the D. And if he ain't gonna give it to you, that means she just might go somewhere else. Also, okay, so when Karen was talking about how it happened, because Aaron definitely asked her, how did this happen? What led to what? So she sits there and she's like, well, he came over and he talked about how he went to jail for the credit card fraud. And then he cried, and then I cried. And I said, hold on. You not about to Ja Rule and Lil Mo this situation. There was no, when I cry, he cried, we cry together. Nobody cried in any of these scenes. What are you talking about? So then she goes on to say, and then he touched me, and then it just happened. And I'm like, when did this... Karen, I'm trying to rock with you, girl, but this ain't adding up. It's just not. So then Aaron's response is, oh, yeah, it's because you love him. And I'm like, no, it's because she just wanted the D that you won't give her. So now, Karen is like, what's next for us? And he's like, I'm going to give you some space because clearly you need to figure out who you want to be with. And, that whole situation is a lot, honestly. Aaron being abstinent, that's a whole situation in itself. He's not giving her the D. And then here comes Zach. And we already know what he can do. So, yeah, the whole situation is a lot. I will say that Karen, I just wanted more for her. I feel like Aaron right now. I wanted more for you. because you deserve to be with Aaron, but I don't understand how you even let the Zach thing even happen. Especially considering that Aaron just told you that you guys are going to have a discussion about, the whole abstinence thing again when y'all went to dinner later that night. Also, why was it when Aaron left on the last episode, when he walked out of the door, it was still like sunny outside? We get to this episode, it's dark, it's like late at night. Tyler Perry, what's up at the time? So, moving forward, I don't know when we're going to see Aaron again, but I don't see him leaving the show. So, I definitely think that Karen and Aaron are going to find their way back to each other despite this situation. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about this next scene, which is Danny and Sabrina there riding in the car together. And Sabrina, she ends up telling Danny, like, yeah, I think I want to go out with Jacoby. And I'm just like, I'm surprised a little bit that you're even still interested in Jacoby. Just because when they went out to that bar, it didn't really seem like they were having that much of a good time. Especially considering she had to give like a lesson on understanding Maurice. Then when they got back to the house, he still wanted to drink and hang out. She didn't. Then he ends up pulling his thing out, and that was kind of random, and it's not like it's something that she technically wanted. Like, honestly, I feel like all the things that happened with Jacoby that night, to any woman in the real world, it will be red flags. So I don't even understand why she's trying to entertain Jacoby. So after she says this, Danny is like, well, okay, but don't bring up Panty Man. And we already know she is talking about Calvin. So Sabrina is like, well, I can't even talk to you about him. And she's like, no, I don't want to hear about him. So I completely understand what Danny is talking about. Why are we continuing to drag on this situationship, I guess, with Calvin? We all know you don't want him. He's not the type of man that you want. Let's move on. So Sabrina ends up getting a phone call, and it was from her friend who was going to look into the fraud situation, the credit card fraud situation. And her friend basically was like, oh, well, I'm going to send the video footage over to you. It actually wasn't a guy. It was a woman who committed this credit card fraud. All right, so they end up watching the video, and Danny is like, wait a second. I think that that's one of Karen's clients who is doing this. I said, okay, if that's the storyline that we gonna go with, okay, one of Karen's clients is the one who's doing this credit card fraud, right? How does the client know who Zach is? And how does the client know Zach's last name? How is it that the client, it seems like there's footage from the person purchasing something. That's what I'm going to assume. How is it that the person was able to get the card information? How is it that what's her name, Karen or Pam, they never reported that the credit card was stolen? I have so many questions because this does not make sense. Like, I would love for you guys to let me know what you think of this situation, because to me, I'm just like, just how did this happen? And it's one of her clients. That's just so weird, but whatever. One thing that I will say is that this just proves that maybe Karen should take some advice from Danny, because Danny continuously asked her, hey, are you sure that it's Zach? Do you have any proof that it's Zach? Like, how do you know that it's Zach? And she was just always like, it's him. He did it. It's him. And it's like, look at you. You about to have egg on your face, girl. All right, y'all. Let's go ahead and talk about Calvin and Maurice. So, honestly, I could have done without this entire scene because it did not push any of the storylines. It was just there. So Calvin is like ironing his clothes. Maurice comes in. Calvin doesn't want to speak to him. And they just kind of go back and forth about how it was wrong for Maurice to tell Sabrina and blah, blah, blah. We've literally had this conversation multiple times at this point. So Maurice is like, well, I was just jealous because the thought of you being in the room with somebody else and it wasn't me. And I'm like, Maurice, it wasn't even him in the room. Like, also, he was straight. According to him, he's straight. Why are we... This is just so frustrating watching the show, just because I feel like we keep having the same conversation over and over when it comes to Maurice and Calvin at this point. So at some point in this conversation, Calvin is like, yeah, you just couldn't wait to go back and kiki with Sabrina and spill the tea and all this stuff. And I'm just like, why are you randomly using lingo that will be considered gay lingo? Like, why? Also, why haven't they explained why the bartenders at the bar saw him talking to some man? Because like I said, you cannot confuse Calvin with his friend Boosie. You just can't confuse the two people. So basically, Calvin, he says that he's done with Sabrina. He's no longer interested in Sabrina. He's not even the type of guy that she wants. She wants some thug, like the guy who works at the bank. Why is he even working at the bank? Just all this random stuff. And I'm just like, why do you even care about Jacoby? And why do you even care about Sabrina? Considering she don't like you. So at some point, Calvin is like, I bet they were hanging out outside of work. And Maurice is like, how'd you find out about that? He's like, yeah, you just told me. So where were they hanging out? Calvin, why are you asking where they were hanging out? When you keep sitting up here telling Maurice that you're not thinking about Sabrina, you're not worried about her no more, you're not even checking for her. Yeah, you are. So then he goes on about how, she just couldn't be in a committed relationship and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I feel like we are talking in circles when it comes to Calvin and Maurice and Sabrina. Like, the past couple of episodes, I feel like we have just been going in circle after circle after circle. At some point, for some reason, they kind of got into it. I don't even know why or how the conversation changed. I just kind of left that where it was. I didn't even try to rewatch it to see why they were going back and forth. I'm just like, I want Calvin can honestly go. Like, we don't really need him on the show anymore because he's no longer an interest of Sabrina's. And Maurice just needs to get some business of his own. Alright, so now we go to Fatima and Zach. She shows up to see Zach because he's still working on his house. I don't understand why Zach is always the only one who's working, but I digress. So she comes in, she ends up giving him a $25,000 check or whatever. And he's like, wow, like, this is mine, for real, this is mine. And she's like, yes, but I would suggest that you reinvest it. And he's like, oh, but I thought I was going to, get my own place, do all this stuff. And she's like, well, you can take out $2,000 and then reinvest all of it. So that way you can probably get a larger profit on the next property that they flip or whatever. And so he's like, well, I was, like he said, he was trying to get his own place. And she's like, well, you can just stay with me. And next thing you know, she digs in her bag and gives him a key to her place. And I'm like, no, Fatima, no. He just slept with Karen. Keep in mind, y'all, ain't not a one shower been had between him and Karen. So they just walking around here all nasty. You know what I'm saying? Because he didn't take no shower unless there's a shower in the, place that he's working on. And he took a shower there, which I highly doubt. Because they probably don't have running water. And when it comes to Karen, she didn't take no shower either. She just hopped in the car and drove to Andy's house. Just nasty. But anyways, when it comes to this whole Zach and Fatima situation, I'm like, Fatima, no, because she's getting in over her head at this point because you're offering him a key, yet he's still, well, isn't still, I wouldn't say that, but he just slept with his ex. So y'all are not on the same page. And even when he continues to ask her, though, you know, what are we? Are we dating? She never gives a solid answer. So I kind of feel like, I don't know, I'm kind of torn on this because technically they're not dating. However, they are spending a lot of time together and he practically lives there. And that is one thing about like relationships nowadays that I feel like people didn't really have to go through back in the day. Because like if I was with you back in the day, I was with you. Nowadays we got situationships, we got this talking stage that don't make no damn sense. Because I just feel like, what is the difference between talking and dating at this point? Because technically we would say that Fatima and Zach are fuck buddies, but also they're still in the talking stage, even though he technically was only seeing her, she was only seeing him to our knowledge, and both of them, they are hooking up, they're doing everything that a relationship would be, but they don't have a title on it. Okay, y'all. So Zach ends up, she wanted a kiss from Zach, and he ends up giving her a kiss on the forehead. I was like, yeah, because his mouth done been somewhere else, girl, and you don't want to know where. But you gonna find out. So that pretty much wraps up that scene. Also, when Fatima was telling him about how he needs to, like, reinvest the money, I'm like, you just gave this guy, who ain't never had nothing, $25,000, and then you tell him he can only get $2,000 of it? I mean, I get why, but I feel like it would have been fine if he would have taken $5,000 for himself. Come on now, he earned the money. Also, I think I said that he got a check for $25,000, but really, she handed him a bag of cash like a drug dealer. Like, I'm sorry, but what kind of program is this that they don't give you your funds, that your technically your wages, I guess, or whatever, the profit that you made in a check? They literally gave him $25,000 in cash. How does that make any type of sense? But whatever, it's Tyler Perry. Let's go ahead and talk about the next scene. You guys, we get to Andy and her main guy, the guy who is the apple of her eye. Of course, it's Gary, and let's go ahead and talk about this. So basically, he tells her, hey, I know that I'm getting counseling, but I think that we both should get counseling. And she is kind of like, yeah, okay, kind of brushing it off, until he's like, yeah, and you should be in counseling as well. So then she kind of gets offended as if she doesn't need counseling. Like, girl, you definitely have a lot of issues and you should be in counseling. This is the one time that I'm going to agree with Gary, that Andy needs to be in counseling. You know who else technically needs to be in counseling or some type of therapy? Karen. Because Karen literally watched somebody kill themselves. She done shot that lady brother, and she never got counseling for that or therapy. But you know what? That's for another time for me to talk about that. So back to Andy and Gary. So, like I said, Andy's kind of taken aback and kind of offended that Gary even feels like she needs counseling, because she feels like her little life is perfect. Andy feels like she's the trophy, she's the prize, so why would she need any type of counseling? I think I may have jumped ahead a little bit, but I do know that Gary ended up mentioning something about how, they're going to put all this behind them, blah, 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 and then Andy goes, well, there's one thing that, it kind of makes me a little nervous about all this. It's your jealousy or whatever. So that's when he decided to bring up the fact that, Andy, sometimes you do things and I don't even think that she realizes that she does it because it's a part of her personality. But she definitely uses her femininity and her being pretty and her being the successful woman to definitely get attention from men. Let's not act like Andy does not, have this thing about her that Tyler has written. I definitely think this has something to do with the writing of her character, that she has to be like the belle of the ball, all eyes are always on Andy. Every guy that Andy has ever come in contact with on this entire show has eyes on her. And I'm like, okay, I can kind of see what Gary is talking about. Just when I think about it, like, for example, that cop, the way that he was acting with Andy, absolutely unprofessional. The bellboy who brought up the flowers and all of that, I cannot see Andy ever even engaging or talking to this man ever. So why is there a little bit of flirtation happening? Same thing when it comes to Paris. Y'all, let's be honest. Andy is a lawyer at the top of her game. You know, she's doing her thing, right? Even though we ain't seen her work a case yet. Why would she ever date Paris, who is the guy who cleans the building? It like legit. I'm not even trying to be funny. I'm just trying to, like, real life. I don't think that Andy as a lawyer would ever go for a guy like Paris because of his occupation. Because think of how she views Gary. Gary, she sees him as like this boss ass dude who has like his shit together. He has some type of I don't even know what Gary does, but he has some type of job where it's a career. It's not a job. He's making probably 6 figures or probably more, according to, you know, Tyler Perry's writing. I would never see her with a guy like Paris. However, did she entertain him? Yep. Did she sit up there and, you know, floss her prettiness all around him? Sure did. Even though we all know that Andy would never give that man the time of day. So her comeback is that, you know, she's never had to, you know, sleep with anybody to get her job. She's never had to do anything that was out of order. And it is not her, basically it's not her fault that she's pretty and men are attracted to her. So they then end up going on and on about how they need to be married and they want to set a date. And here comes her girls, just busted through the door. When they get there, of course, Gary is out here trying to run out the door because every time he sees Andy's friends, he knows that they're going to go in on both of them. So he's trying to leave. He's like, all right, I'm going to leave. And Danny's like, oh no, you should stay. You should stay. And all the other ladies are like, yeah, you should leave. You should leave. And I'm like, I'm kind of with Danny. No, maybe he needs to actually hear this because it's not getting through to Andy. And Gary needs to hear how messed up he is because no one has been able to tell him this. Because you have Aaron, yes, he's a counselor, but he's more so on the listening side. And he's not really telling Gary, like, hey, you are trifling. You messed up. Andy's has fallen head over heels for this guy. And nobody is telling him, dude, you're crazy. So he ends up leaving, right? Now the ladies have to have this conversation with Andy, right? Oh, but who's quiet? Who has nothing to say? It's Karen. And I'm like, all because you slept with Zach, that does not mean that Andy it has like the upper hand or you guys are on like equal levels. This is not equal playing field at all. Like what Zach has done versus what Gary has done. I'm sorry, those are 2 different playing fields. Gary tried to kill you. Zach ain't never tried to kill Karen. He was just broke. And he was a cheater. You know what? Before I really go in on that situation, let me rewind back. Because the one person who I thought, you know, wasn't going to have a lot to say, because she's usually very naive, is Sabrina. Sabrina had the most sense in this entire scene. Which is shocking. Because she ain't got no sense in her situation. So Sabrina ends up asking Andy, like, yo, are you engaged? And she's like, well, he asked and I said yes with the biggest smile on her face. And I'm like, girl, you see your girls are trying to have an intervention with you. Okay. So Sabrina is not here for it. Danny is like, oh, wow, look at the rock on her finger. And Danny suggested she doesn't get a prenup. Because, I mean, if she's going to be getting her ass beat, she might as well get paid for it. So then you have Karen and Sabrina like, that's not cool that you're saying this. But I'm like, I mean, listen, this is what she's signing up for. What's the best solution out of this besides her not going through with it? Also, when Andy was showing off that ring to Sabrina, talking about oh yeah, maybe she needs a closer look. I feel like this was her one moment to be like, look at me. I'm the first girl out of this little crew who's going to be getting married. I mean, like I've said in previous reviews, Andy don't like these girls. Like, she don't really like Danny. She don't really like Sabrina. She just kind of tolerates them. And then Karen is the only one who she mostly tolerates because she feels like Karen is more so on her level. As in, Karen is a business owner and all that stuff. She really does get off on the fact that she's doing better than her girls. I mean, even look at her and Karen's relationship. When Karen had, all these great, happy feelings about her being with Aaron, Andy was quick to be like, girl, you still want to be with Zach. Girl, you still like Zach. Girl, it's all about Zach. What about Zach? Andy was definitely one of the people, besides Danny, who always brought up Zach. Because Andy felt like, if I got to deal with Gary and he put me through all this, I have to remind Karen that Zach had to put her through all the things that he put her through. She just could not get over the fact that Karen was finally happy. Like I've said previously, Andy was jealous that Karen ended up finding, what's that guy name? Aaron. She was jealous because she found a good man. So now that Karen has cheated, well, not cheated, but she slept with Zach, this kind of is a boost to Andy's ego of the fact that, see, I told you so, Karen. You wasn't over Zach. You wasn't over him. Like, if I'm the only one who got annoyed at the fact that Karen just sat there looking stupid while Andy is like, oh, I know why she looking like that. It's because of Zach. Oh, she saw Zach. Oh, and she slept with him too. And I'm like, girl, you got all of that info just from her just sitting there? Okay. All right, Andy. So now we have Karen over here talking about oh, well, I saw him today and it just happened and I still love him. And I'm like, we're not doing this. We don't want Karen with Zach. They are just not a good match for each other. And as viewers, we don't want to see it. Like, the simple fact that she has found out that he's not the one who took her credit card and, ran up her credit. And now she over here talking about she want to make it work and she wants to try with Zach. And I'm just like, why? He hasn't done anything to you, for you, or he just hasn't done anything to make you think that he is the right guy for you. He hasn't put in any effort to even make it seem like he's still, trying to make things better, Karen. Why waste your time playing around with Zach when he ain't the man for you? Alright, so let's just go ahead and get to this whole grocery store thing because I'm over talking about Karen and Zach. I don't understand why all four of them need to go to the grocery store. I don't know why we had to make this a field trip, but whatever. We're going to act like you couldn't just order cheese or whatever. So they all go to the grocery store. You have Danny just throwing things in a basket, hoping that somebody else will pay for it, because as we know, she's always putting stuff on other people's tabs. And as they're walking through the store, she kind of jokes around with Karen. She's like, oh, how much D does Zach have to put on your tab or something like that. So I'm like, all right, here goes the conversation about to start up. Next thing you know, as they turn the corner and walk down the main aisle, they end up running into Fatima. And first of all, Andy is like, oh, girl, I didn't know you shop at this store. It's a grocery store. Anybody can shop at a grocery store. Come on now. So Fatima is like, oh, wait, did I just hear you mention Zach? And they're like, oh, yeah. I think Danny was like, yeah, she had like a swingling of the dingling or whatever she was saying. And of course, Andy is the mouthpiece. So she ends up asking Fatima, oh, what's the name of that guy who, you've been seeing lately? And she's like, Zach. So, dun dun dun, they realize that it's the same Zach. Even though Zach is quite a common name, like, I can understand if his name was like Kareem or like, I don't know, something that was a little bit more specific than Zach, because that's like a common name. So, next thing you know, after they have this revelation that it's the same Zach, pretty much, he shows up talking about some, oh, I know they have guava nectar. And then it becomes this awkward situation. I mean, I just feel like I don't understand why Fatima, she seemed like she was very like tense and nervous talking to these ladies. While Karen, once Fatima said Zach, she was just like Zach. But like her stance was very Zach is my man. So I'm very interested to see, you know, how the season finale is going to play out once they really get into the meat and potatoes of this conversation. That pretty much sums up this review. Let me know what you guys thought about the episode. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And I will talk to you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.